now that we know roughly what happens when somebody calls a route, let's go through the process of configuring a new route that is not part of Strapi and handling the request that comes into that route manually. So the documentation for this can be found in the Strapi documentation, of course, and this particular one is in DevDocs, backend customization and routes. And you see that if we go into configuring core routes, you see something similar to what we just done, in which we create, well, that's not the controller. This is here. Where is it? This is the policies. This is routes and not controllers, so maybe that's why. I don't want to say something really stupid, but this seems to be. This seems to be just the routes and not the controllers, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. What we've done works, and so we don't really need to go over the documentation of what to do to make it work. It already does work. But here we can see an example of a custom router for us is gonna look like this. We're gonna have a model exports routes, and it's a list of routes, the method, the path, and the handler. So let's create a custom route. For example, I want to create a route that tells me what tasks I need to do today, right? Without loading all of my tasks, I just want to have the ones that are due today. So let's go in here in an API and let's create a new folder here, and we're gonna call it custom. You can call it whatever you want, just it's easy for me to remember. And in here, we're just gonna create two new folders, one of them called routes and the other one called controllers. And you'll see that it's the same thing that we have here in task. We have controllers and routes. So in routes, we're gonna create a new file called custom.js, and I'm just gonna copy and paste this because I am lazy. So copy and paste, and we're just gonna change the stuff that we need to actually take care of. This is gonna be a GET request, and I wanna get my tasks. So today tasks, and it's gonna go into custom get today tasks. This is the name of the function that we're gonna have to define. So if we save this now, Strapi is gonna crash. Here we go, crashed. Why did it crash? Because it's saying, oh, I'm initializing all the routes, I've added all of them, and then I'm like, oh, I'm looking for get today tasks, but I can't find it within my controllers. So I'm just gonna crash for everybody's safety, I suppose. I don't know why it thinks, but it doesn't matter, because what we're gonna do now is we're gonna define it. So in controllers, we're gonna create another file, and we're gonna call this as well custom.js. And in here, we're just gonna create our thing. So I like to use strict here, but you don't have to. I'm just gonna have to go model.exports, and this is gonna be get today tasks, and it's gonna be that, right? So now we have something. And what I want to do with get today tasks is, well, I mean, gotta be honest with you, this is literally what I want to do, but I'm not gonna do it entirely like this. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write my filter by hand, right? So first I'm gonna be using a library called Moment. Moment is a library that helps you with the processing of dates, and I find it invaluably useful. So let's install it. npm I for install, -s, capital S for save, Moment. This is going to install Moment, and it's going to give it to us in a second. Now that we have it, it's installed, we can go back here and we can say, okay, first of all, I'm just going to be using Moment, so const moment equals require Moment, right? I'm just going to put it back here because it doesn't need to be inside of here. It needs to be at the top somewhere. Now, what I want to do is I want to get my date. So I know that this has a date parameter in the task. And this is where moment comes in. So moment, if you just call it like that, it's today's day. Format, it's saying, okay, format this date by year, month, and date. But I don't want to do that. I want to say moment.start of day to ISO string. So get me the start of today and give me an ISO string. So what's an ISO string? Let's restart the server for a second, right? So this is going to start, and now it should be fine because we in fact have that controller. So if we go back in here and we get our tasks, we see that we have a parameter called date, and date as a date and a time, right? And here we see that if we get that particular, where's the standard client? We have, is it this one? Yes. So we see that the date is in this format that has the year, the month, the day, then T, then hours, minutes, and seconds, and then dot, milliseconds, Z. This is called an ISO format. So this is an ISO string. You can tell it's a string because it's got the wee squiggly quotation marks. So now that we know what we're looking for, we can go back to moment and tell it, hey, get me whatever is due for today. So date for that task, it needs to be the start of today to an ISO string. Good. Now, I could just go and immediately request it again. I could just go here and say, I can just go today tasks, but we're going to get another 403, right? Because whenever we create a route, it needs to be configured. So we go in the settings, roles, authenticated, custom. See, we have a custom thing, custom routes. And now I can allow my authenticated users to request today's tasks. And if I now send it, I see that I found none. There is no task due for today, and today is Saturday, 9th of November. Let's make sure that's true. So tasks, for today, there is one, Saturday, 9th of November. So this should be actually telling me something else. It should tell me, hey, there is one task here. So why does that not happen? Let's have a look. Let's console.log this moment start of day to ISO string and see what that gives us. So let's go get some space and let's make this call. We see that we have the 9th of November for that particular time. So obviously the problem here is, I'm gonna say it, but I'm giving you a second to think about it, right? We're saying that the date needs to be this one, and you'll see that the time is wrong, right? Obviously it's not gonna find anything because it's saying, okay, well, this is the same date, but not the same time, so it can't be the same date, as in the data field date. So what we need to do is actually tell it, hey, the date is actually gonna be a couple of things, right? It's gonna be an end with this being that, right? Greater than equal or less than equal start of day and end of day. So greater than start of day and less than end of day. So I'm using this particular configuration because if we go into the documentation and we go into the query parameters, right? So filters for the query engine document service API filters, we see that we have our end, right? Which is in the example is a top level logical operator. We have and, or, and not. And then we also want to be less than equal or greater than equal. So GTE or LTE. So that's fine, right? So now that we have this, it's greater than the start of day and less than the end of day, and we make the request again, we have 500. So undefined level operator and so this is probably a different problem. So date, okay, so date should not have that particular, and should be a top level operator, so it should be on top of that, but I'm just gonna ignore it, and I'm just gonna tell it that date needs to be within those parameters without the end. This is fine, right? And obviously I need to return the tasks. Right, so now that we have that done, we can go here and boom, we have our particular task. Let's double check this. Let's go into our task and change the date to be on the 10th. Right, so now all of a sudden it's not on the 9th, it's not today. If I send this, boom, empty array. Now, ain't that fantastic? What have we learned today? Well, in this particular session, we learned how to create a custom route that has a path that is completely external to Strapi. It can be anything we want. We can connect it to a handler, right? And this is all created in folders here. And the handler can go and do a certain, number of operations. In this case, it confirms that we are a user and the user is actually what we want. This is not needed, actually, because if we already know from the permissions that we have here, from our permissions, we know that only users can access this custom route. So we don't need to check that a user is there. And this is also true for the override that we've done to the task controller, but let's not think about that for now. Then we get all our tasks where we have an owner, which is us, and the date that we're selecting is today. So between the start of day, so greater or equal than the start of day, and less or equal than the end of day. And then we can get all our tasks. So that's what we learned today, how to create custom controllers. Now, the next step is actually not gonna be a backend. I think we finished everything with the backend, and anything that's not been finished, we can finish it over time, because programming is a dynamic process. We're gonna do what we think is required to complete a project. Then we're gonna do the second step, which in this case, we're gonna switch to React after this. But then we're gonna see that, oh, actually, we may have needed something else. So we can always go back and forth. We don't have to set this project in stone. So if we see that we need to make changes on the back end, we'll make them. If not, it's all good. Right, so we completed the backend section of this crash course, and in the next section, section 3, part 3, is gonna be about React and the front end. So I'll see you there.